Encounter is brought to you by the Broome County Council of Churches, where we connect compassion with needs as we inspire growth with dignity. You'll find us in special places throughout the community. For those who remain hungry, we provide meals. For those who are challenged, we build wheelchair ramps. We comfort those who are ill, minister to those who are confined, and we remain an advocate for change and understanding on behalf of every element of our community. Connect and inspire. Encounter the Broome County Council of Churches.
Good morning. I'm Jeff Kellam, the Parish Associate at Union Presbyterian Church in Endicott. Welcome to this week's edition of Encounter. Let me tell you a quick story. My Aunt Jean Warfield gave me my grandfather's old Kodascope 8mm projector a couple of years back. My grandson came over and he'd never seen a projector before, so I said, you know, it may not work. The motor may not work, the lamp may not come on. Turned out, along with the projector, there were some reels of film. So the whole thing worked beautifully. And so we watched these movies that were made in the late 30s to early 40s. We saw movies of my parents while they were dating. We saw movies of old family vacations along Cape Cod. This is just a treasure trove. But you know, eventually the lamp's not going to turn on anymore, and eventually the parts won't be available for the old projector. So how do we take these reels of film and put them on a memory stick to preserve them so that my grandchildren and great-grandchildren and other generations can learn something of the history of the family? Turns out it's not just the history of the family, but some of these old movies have value for the whole community. The Past to Future project at Binghamton University is going to digitize these old movies and other items of importance too, and make them available not just for the families, but for scholarship, for academia, for study. Kevin Wright is the project director for Past to Future. Welcome to Encounter.
Thank you, Jeff.
Tell me how this got started. What's behind Past to Future?
Okay. Several years ago, we asked undergraduate students at Binghamton University kind of what was missing in their education, or what would they like greater opportunities to be involved in. And one of the themes that came out very strongly was more opportunities to participate in research, and not just be in the classroom, but to actually be able to study topics and that sort of thing. The university has done an outstanding job for the students in the STEM fields: science, technology, engineering, math. Yeah. We have a very big project for freshmen. They come to Binghamton University, they take a research course their very first semester there, and then they begin working with professors on projects. And they've produced some, research that's actually gotten attention. They've presented papers, written articles. So we've been very successful with the students in the STEM fields. But for students that are working in or studying in the humanities and social sciences, we've had fewer opportunities. And so there were a group of individuals on campus that said, we need to provide, a medium for students to be able to engage in research while they're an undergraduate, and particularly early in their academic career at Binghamton University. Yeah. So, there was a lot of thought given to that, and how could we do that? And then someone said, Binghamton in the Binghamton area has such a rich history. It would provide students with just a wealth of information to study, the various issues that they'll encounter, whether they're studying history or sociology or political science or geography. So let's focus on that. And so if we could begin to capture some of the materials that are available about that history, then we could provide individuals the opportunity. At the same time, we're able to provide a service to the community. So the deal is, if you'll provide us with materials from your family, from your work, that document that rich history of Binghamton, we'll digitize those materials for you and give them back to you. In exchange, students and faculty at the university, as well as community members, have the opportunity to take a look at your materials and to study them and to explore that history.
Yeah. So we're not just talking about 8mm movies from the old days, but you're looking for other things as well.
pretty much anything that you might have that documents both the history of your family as well as the history of the community.
Sure.
So it could be photographs or slides, films, obviously, audio recordings, diaries, letters, immigration papers, pretty much, anything that's in either a film or flat format, we can digitize.
So the original owner of this old projector, my grandfather, one of my last conversations with him, I sat down with a cassette recorder and asked him some questions. So he talked about World War I. He talked about the early days of IBM.
Right.
That's the kind of thing that you'd be interested in.
Sure.
Yeah. Now you told me that you were going around to some faith communities to talk about this project. What's the link between the faith communities and what we're talking about here?
Well, many of our faith communities are tied to patterns of people ending up here. So if you look at all the Gold Dome churches that we have in this area, they represent faith communities that came here from Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
And so many of those individuals came to work at EJ.
Yeah.
And so the people that are currently attending were either the original immigrants or the first generation or second generation of those immigrants. And so I'm fairly, confident that families have, photographs from, picnics at EJ,
Yeah.
or, photographs of the buildings, what they originally looked like. Or, they may have films or documents about, how the person got here, what happened to the family, that sort of thing, that would be of great interest.
A lot of this stuff is languishing in people's closets. It's in old boxes that haven't been looked at in years because folks really don't know what to do with it.
Right.
They might have slide trays, but no way to look at the slides. And this must be quite a project to have students going through all this material trying to decide what's appropriate and what's not.
If you provide us with a box of documents, we will digitize it all.
Yeah.
And because who knows what a student or a scholar may find of particular interest and useful in their study. So, whatever you provide us, we will digitize the entire, and we may have some discussions about things that might not be as useful to us just in order to control the workload.
Sure.
But for the most part, we digitize everything.
Sure.
And we all have family materials in our attics. I think it's just,
That's what they're for.
That's right. It's difficult to throw those things away.
Yeah.
And you're exactly right. It's hard to go up and look at it. It's hard to get around in my attic, for example. So I don't look at it very much. But the other thing is, if you have things that we can digitize, then you now have it in a form to share with everyone in your family. So rather than the materials being in your attic and your brothers and sisters not having access, now you all have access.
Yeah.
You can take a look at them at Thanksgiving when everyone gets together.
Sure.
You can also, have some assurance that the materials will survive beyond you. A lot of the things in our attic as families, once we pass, as our family comes in and has to make hard decisions about what to keep and all, they may not even know what's in that box. And they're hustling to get things disposed of. And so one of my greatest fears is so much of our rich history could end up in the landfill.
Yes,
rather than, being available for the next generation within the family, but the next generation, of students that are coming to Binghamton University.
Yep. Let me show a picture of that was taken, I assume, in the mid-40s. We'll put that up on the screen, and you tell me what you learned from it.
Okay.
Not as a criminologist, but as well. Here's one. What do you see in that photo?
Well, obviously there's artifacts from that period of history that raise questions that have changed. So in the lower, our right-hand corner, there's a TV.
Yeah.
For a student going to Binghamton University that was born right around 2000. that's an interesting object right there, isn't it?
Yeah.
What is that? Why is it so big? Why is the picture so small?
Yeah.
And so, whether it's an engineering student that is interested in the change in how, TV is provided, to a student that might be interested in the programming that occurred at that time and how media has changed over time.
Yeah.
So there's lots of questions just with that one artifact, and then there's a series of artifacts that could...
We're for the radio audience, we're looking at a picture of a living room with, and I said mid-40s. This is mid-50s. So the TV is there, and then a very old-looking chair, and that big grandfather clock, which is also an artifact. People don't necessarily have room for them anymore. Let's go on to one other picture, and this is a picture of a small boy dressed with a hat and a coat, and you could describe for the audience the rest of what's...
Well, there's a car in the background and a couple of turn-of-the-century Victorian-type houses that we can see behind the automobile. There's a variety of things. One is who is this child and what's happened to him since then, and is he of significance? And we're all of significance. We all have interesting stories of how our lives have unfolded and taken place. So the child himself could be of interest. The way the child is dressed, I think if we showed this to a group of child's probably 5. If we showed them to 5 to 7-year-olds, they'd have something to say about the way this kid's dressed today.
Well, and I think if you look at it in terms of, we'll take it to some fashion design students,
Right.
and say this is the way a child was dressed up in those days. I'm interested in the car. It looks like a mid-40s sleek 2-door coupe, very aerodynamic looking, and perhaps a General Motors of some sort. My grandfather had nothing but Oldsmobiles, so I'm guessing that was an Oldsmobile. So we look at these old pictures, and I think I may have told you that, and we went to see some family members, and I took some slide trays. We looked at old slides, and what my brother and sisters were interested in wasn't so much what we all looked like back then in the 60s. That's where these slides are from. But they looked at the artifacts. They looked at things in the pictures and said, oh, there's that painting. I didn't know we had that painting back then. And who has that now? Or there's that object on the table. I remember that from childhood. These are memories for us that are personal. But again, people in academic settings can look at these things and see a difference in the way people lived 50, 60 years ago or longer ago.
Well, I think a good example is we have one individual from the community that loaned us films that we've digitized, family films. Her father had began taking pictures back, or films back in the 1940s, and had them all the way to the 1970s. This particular family went to South Carolina every year on family vacation, so we have films of their family vacations in Charleston. Well, one of the things that a student or a scholar might be interested in is taking a look at the changes in Charleston over time, since we have them every time. So let's say you perhaps might be interested in changes in race relations in Charleston. Can we look at those images and see changes over time from those family vacations?
Sure.
No one's done that yet, and so, to actually sit down and look through them. But that's an example of how a student or a scholar might be able to take something that was, the family vacation.
Yeah. You were telling me too about local history, that some students come from Long Island to Binghamton University and think, well, here we are in Binghamton. What's Binghamton got going for it? And
right.
You can make a list of the things. Our guest today, by the way, is Kevin Wright. He is the director of the Past to Future Project, which is our topic for today, looking at rescuing some of the old media and digitizing them for future generations for our personal use, but also making them available for students and for researchers.
Right.
So let's go back to this question about the Triple Cities.
Well, one of the first students that got involved in the project, because as soon as we started the project, we needed a workforce, and so we started providing students with the opportunity to be involved. And this young man was not from this area, part of the scholars programs at Binghamton, and so he came and I was interviewing him to see if he might be appropriate for working. And he was a history major and interested in World War II. And so I said, we're starting this project. And he looked at me, really quizzical and said, well, Professor Wright, what's happened here that, this project could actually have, historical materials to study? And I said, Jonathan, did you know that the world's largest shoe company used to be in Binghamton? He goes, no, really? I didn't know anything about that. And I said, Jonathan, did you know that IBM started in Binghamton? No, I didn't know that. So he really had no idea about this area and its history.
And the link trainers, the simulators for flight training.
So,
we take all this for granted, those of us who have lived here all our lives.
Right. And it was interesting to watch him as he learned about it. And, fairly soon as he began to learn about EJ, he went, because of his interest in World War II, he said, all the boots that were worn at Normandy and the invasion of Normandy were made in Binghamton. People need to know that.
And Endicott in Johnson City, I hasten to add.
Right. Yeah. And so he was, yes.
Yeah.
He was.
As an Endicott kid, I have to.
But he started to have an interest in promoting Binghamton.
Yeah.
And so one of the values, I think, for this community, it'll be a very secondary value, is it will provide Binghamton University students with a tie to the community. So maybe some of them will stay in this community, but even if they don't remain here, it gives them a greater appreciation for the place that they've landed to do their studies.
At a significant time in their lives, to be sure. So let's have some contact information before we go much further so that we don't get to the end of the program and I forget it.
Okay.
How can folks get in touch with you to deliver materials or to see if they're appropriate? And then I'd love to talk about the process a little bit too, about how we sign a document, that kind of thing.
The best way to get in touch with me is probably by email. My email is very easy to remember. It's simply Wright, like Wilbur and Orville, WRIGHT, at binghamton.edu. So if you'll remember Wilbur and Orville, Binghamton, SUNY Binghamton, and .edu, not .org, not .com, edu, then you can contact me. Or if they'd like to call, often there's no one in the office that answers the phone, but if they call and leave a message, we'll get right back to them. The number is 607-777-2051, and simply leave a message with your name and your phone number, and we'll give you a call back and can talk to you that way.
Repeat that number. It's
607-777-2051.
Great. So now, what are you sign a document that gives you permission to use the material, the visuals or the audio or whatever it is.
Right. We've actually changed our agreement. Originally, we were asking people to give complete control of the materials to the university in exchange for. We've changed that now so that you retain the rights to use your materials and to share them, and if you were writing a book or something like that, you still have the rights to use your materials without the university's permission. What you grant us is the right to A, use those for research purposes, and to B, to put them on a platform that's available through the library, so that students, faculty at Binghamton, but actually, because we're a public university, individuals anywhere. So if you have materials, others in the community that are interested in what might be there, they can go and log on to the BU website, go to our library, and look at the digitized materials also.
Right. So when you take these old movies, I'm stuck on the movies because that's what I brought in. Right. You're cleaning them up. When you digitize, you're not going to have this old hair in the gate kind of thing. Right. So you're going to clean them up a little bit too.
What we actually do is, with movies, is we have equipment that takes a photograph of every frame within the film.
Wow.
And then we use software that allows us to stitch all of those frames together so it turns it back into a movie. But we can also go in and do some cleaning. So we get rid of all the white space that might be there. We can get rid of some of the fuzziness. It still looks like an old film.
Sure.
But it's a better film than what you gave us.
Yep.
So we're able to do that and give that back.
You're not going to dub them, though. I'm not going to have any beautiful symphonic music behind them.
No, but once you get it in back, then let's say you're having Thanksgiving and the whole family's there, and you think it would be kind of, interesting to have the opportunity for everyone to watch that film. You could go back and do that, or you could narrate it, or you could put music behind it. So it gives individuals the opportunity to be very creative with their own materials.
It's a fascinating project, and I love the fact that it's something that we